Now, Ukraine's central bank sees the economy expanding by 3.4% this year, driven by internal demand, investments, and, of course, favorable trade conditions. Amongst the main risks identified is the termination of the IMF's $17.5 billion bailout, which has been frozen for more than a year. Well, Ukraine also recently amended anti-corruption legislation in a bid to help restart the transfers. Any delay could see the country hit by the market turmoil gripping other developing nations. So how close is the government to accessing the funds? Well, joining us now is Oksana Markarova. She is Ukrainian's finance minister. So, Minister, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time right here on Bloomberg TV. First of all, what are the current stages of talks with the IMF? Do you see them improving? Do you see them restarting anytime soon?
As soon as I was appointed the acting Minister of Finance, that's one of the key priorities to resume and move actively with IMF in our talks. I think we have a very good discussions at the moment. So, as you just said, the anti-corruption court was adopted in a format that hopefully we'll hear that is according to the program. Most importantly, it's exactly what we wanted and we need for Ukraine to be established soon. But also on the budget and on the gas prices, we are having very constructive discussions, which I hope to constructively end soon.
But Minister, how close are we to a deal? How quickly? What's the sooner that you can actually expect a deal with the IMF, and are they ready to compromise?
I wouldn't talk about compromises, actually, because we stay true to the principles that we have discussed together. It's explaining and finding some of the solutions, especially on the budget, for example. When we have started discussions earlier, we only had first quarter results. Now we have 6 months results, which are better than what we have expected in the first quarter. So I think we are well positioned to either agree or prove to the IMF that in some numbers our position was correct one, and discuss the mitigating measures where they are needed, and we also see that they are needed.
But how quickly can you get the next, a tranche of money?
We are doing everything possible on our side to do it quicker. As you know, the tranche goes to the NBU reserves and not to the budget, but our other budget financing is dependent on that. So we are doing everything possible to do it in the quickest possible time. I wouldn't want to name a date or right now, but I hope it's going to be soon.
And Minister, what's your latest plans for selling Eurobonds?
We are watching the market closely. As you saw that there were some negative developments with the EM earlier. There are improvements now. We are prepared to come back to the market as soon as the market is ready to see us there. In the budget for this year, we have plans to come back to the market this year. So we will be doing it this year. The exact months when are we going to do, we'll see. The market will tell us, basically.
And Minister, you're here in London also to meet with investors. You're meeting with the EBRD, who also have a 5-year plan for Ukraine. What's the question you get asked the most? Are people worried that actually, trade tensions will hurt Ukraine like they have other emerging markets?
Well, some tensions are actually opportunities for Ukraine, because with the number of agreements that we have signed during the previous 2 years with the countries, I think we are well positioned to actually increase our exports. I think we are well positioned to help other countries with their food security. We are well positioned to help their countries with expanding in the areas which Ukraine presents very good place to invest right now. With the new laws, with the new law on privatization especially, we are urging investors, and we see very good response to the new rules, essentially, that we are providing to participate in privatization. So I think, even though, yes, the world is now somewhat volatile place, it presents a lot of opportunities for Ukraine.
So you don't expect Ukraine to possibly be engulfed by the uncertainty that's engulfing a lot of other neighboring countries?
We are doing a lot of things to basically decrease the uncertainty in Ukraine. That's why one of my goals in this position is to start the 3-year budgeting in Ukraine. I think this is the major tool that we can give to investors, that they will actually see the budget as the anchor and the most important part, not the program with international partners, which is very important, and we will have it, but the budget being something that is adopted and provides a clear indication where Ukraine is going this year and during the next 3 years.
All right, thanks so much, Minister. We're just going to be looking at some of the market moves, and we'll get to the Minister in just a second. I'm looking at market moves, a little bit of uncertainty actually when it comes to what happens with euro-dollar. Stocks dropping, investors trying to figure out exactly what the warnings from the G20 mean. Of course, the warnings came from the world's financial leaders about the impact of protectionism, about the impact also of protectionism and what that means for world growth. And when you look at of course, the unique situation, Minister, of Ukraine, will Ukraine be hurt by these trade tensions between the US and China?
We were not included into the global market, and that was one of the key risks before. Now it becomes a very good opportunity. We see a big interest from investors from both US, European Union and China into lots of projects in Ukraine, into potentially infrastructure projects after we hope the concession law will be adopted this September, and into all other kind of projects that we have ready for the investors. So
Tom and I were actually in Helsinki, my co-anchor, covering the Helsinki summit between President Putin and President Trump. Do you get asked about that in investors' meeting?
We asked about the security situation in general. So, and there I think it's the most important thing is that our international partners, European Union, US, Canada, stand behind us, and we see, even though there could be some speculations about how it will be developed, but again, we see a firm support for Ukraine. We see sanctions staying. We see a firm position on supporting Ukraine in this, and I think that is very important for Ukraine. But also for investors, it's very important to come and see. And we bring investors, in addition to being the Minister of Finance, I'm also the Government Commissioner on Investments. So we are working with investors, and we're bringing them not only to Kyiv or Lviv, we're bringing them to Kharkiv, and if they're brave enough, to Mariupol. So with their own eyes, they can see that Ukraine is open for investments. And even though our army is holding the enemy, you do not feel it in a majority of places, and you feel safe.